Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. I was just talking and now I'm all messed up. Thanks for that, Nathaniel. Anyway, let's start this over. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night segment of the Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live right here on United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee who have been a part of our journey since the very beginning. We would not be here without them. So thank you, Folgers. We appreciate you so very much. Also, big thank you to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, aka Justin Snicker, who is responsible for our intro and our outro. So it's his voice you hear and his music that you're hearing. Please note, he's an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music. And of course, he can be found anywhere that good music can be found. Also, Steve McGinnis, who is basically the artist behind the cool banners and everything you see for the Outer Realm. So big thank you to Steve. So guys, we are on Roku. Yes, we are. And if you're on Roku and you're not checking us out, go check us out. Come on. It's going to be great. You guys can watch us now from the comfort of your living room, which is fantastic. So go check us out. Also, tonight after the show, we have a very special edition for you guys to watch. We don't do this very often, so definitely go check it out. It is a 1-hour segment with Brian Allan, who's going to be, or he did discuss his book called The Book of Secrets. And all I can tell you is it is freaking mind-blowing. Let me tell you what, it is mind-blowing. I think we talked about 3 chapters. It was just like, I couldn't believe the time was over. But anyway, stay tuned for that right after the full-on live segment of the Outer Realm. So tonight, I'm really pleased and really happy that my dear friend, Nathaniel Gillis, I know Amelia's just like very jealous right now, but anyway, my dear friend, Nathaniel Gillis, is here and he is basically going to be hanging out with us tonight. And we're going to be talking about, wait for it, the alien deception. I know. It's always good when we're talking about aliens. Anyway, without further ado, Nathaniel, how's it going?
What's up, Michelle? Oh my God, I'm back, and I am so excited. And as I've told you before, of course, I'll miss Amelia. And wish she was with us. But hello, and hey, it's so good to be back with you, Michelle, and I'm sure we're going to have a tremendous conversation.
We'll have to get back to this guy. Sorry, guys, a long one.
I saw that.
Yeah. I'm really happy that you're able to come back out and hang out, and it's really funny because the topic of conversation is similar to what I had recorded with the guest earlier about this stuff, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I mean, Brian's been around he's been in the field for like 50 years. He's out in Scotland.
Yeah.
And it's just stuff that he's been researching. And when you and I have dabbled about this conversation prior, I'm just going, there's other people who are, not far off. They have their own ideas and they believe, like, of course, tonight can be a whole other conversation, but I know you've touched on some of the same things. And it's just like, see, that there's just some people that aren't afraid to go there.
Right. And if I think a lot of people in the field aren't ready for us to go there. I think this is some groundbreaking research. It's so funny. I know that Brian Allan, I think he was also with Dr. Barry Fitzgerald. Both of them. You put both of them
Oh, they've
together,
both been on the
it's
show. I know.
lights out, Michelle. Holy
I
smokes!
know. I know. I know. I had to do a two-parter on the
Oh
deception of
my
gods and
God!
men. It was fantastic.
Wow. Yeah, it's incredible.
Fantastic.
It's incredible work. But yeah, so I've come to the same conclusions myself,
Mm,
and I was, you know me, and most people don't know me as well as you do. Most of the time I'll stay up all night long if I'm on a trail of something. I'll research and research, and hey, what do you
right.
think about this theory? And so, I was listening to Dr. Barry Fitzgerald in the wee hours of the morning. But yeah, so the research is transcending every microcosm, and it's so interesting, the correlation and sometimes the contrast between researchers in the States, if
Mm-hmm.
I could say that,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
those who are overseas, or not even overseas, but
yeah.
in Britain, England, like
Yeah,
overseas,
it's
but
true.
even in Canada,
Yeah.
we have such a non-threat narrative here, and I mean, you saw my Facebook post. I won't go into that. Yeah, but the research, it's
Uh-huh.
very interesting. But I think that the more we get into it, there is a single theory hypothesis, single origin hypothesis, where Dr. Barry Fitzgerald even goes deeper, where he hypothesized the other night that we're dealing with one single entity doing it all, which
Mm.
which I mean, how much further research do we have to do before we start hypothesizing that it's the devil or Satan or that's the singularity? I don't know, but I don't believe that, of course. But it seems like that's where he's going, right? There's one entity that's controlling it all. I don't know what to
There's,
think.
yeah, there's some people that believe that extraterrestrials are the demonic.
Yeah.
They simply are, and that they come in under the guise of something else.
Mhm.
So we don't all panic, but it's really
Right.
hard. Hi, Fernanda. It's really hard to say for sure. There are people who have unbelievably amazing experiences.
Mhm.
They're healed,
Yeah.
their abilities are completely developed. They can tell you, oh no, like especially people who are really intuitive who are saying, no,
Right.
these mind beings. I don't know. Are
It's
we really
terrifying, isn't it?
being fooled to that degree, or are there a mix of both?
Well, here's something that that I've been kind of entertaining, and I'm going to mention experiencers obviously tonight, but I'm also going to mention other parapsychologists, researchers. So
Yeah.
it's not that I dislike them, but how you're dealing with
Oh
case
yeah,
studies, so
man.
you
Just
have to
stage
explain.
stage is yours. Just go crazy.
All
Yeah.
right. So we're dealing with orbs now, and what Grant Cameron calls orbology. Um, in Dr. Barry Taft's work, he was dealing
Hmm.
with what's called the San Pedro haunting, and he said that there was an orb that was just moving like an orb does throughout the house, and he said all of a sudden, corpuscular balls of light showed up.
Right.
I love his language, corpuscular.
I know.
And they flashed, and when they did, boom! All of a sudden, the orb itself projected a full-bodied apparition. Now that's something I've never heard before. I've heard of
Right.
orbs, heard of apparitions,
Yeah.
but he said that literally, like it popped, and when it did, he said that all the researchers that were present with him, they looked at it, and it was a moving apparition. He said it was lime green, and its arms were moving, and its head was, doing this number. And he said all of a sudden, everybody around him passed out. Boom. Now, then you fast forward to Chris Blett because they're freaking out, right? That would be terrifying.
Yeah.
Um, Chris Bledsoe is saying that his beings, quote, his beings, are coming out of orbs as well. Huh? And
Mm.
right, but now the being that's coming out of his orbs, or the orbs that are haunting him, say, but that's an extraterrestrial. And I'm looking at both of these phenomena, and I'm thinking in my mind, that's kind of similar.
But there's
It
lots of
really is.
similarities.
Yeah, and it's kind of scary when you get down to the data. It's like I don't even want this to be true. You know what I mean? I would love
Mm.
to separate all this and hope, and pray that these are different
Well, I've had
phenomena.
experiences with both personally. But before I even touch on that, let's explore the similarities. I mean, you have you have similarities for, let's say, odors. both are projected sulfuric smells. You have the sleep paralysis thing. You have the logical, then you've got the Hag syndrome and the paranormal, then you have sleep paralysis under an abduction. You have had the scratching of the three on both.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? So it's like right there.
Yeah.
Those are some pretty compelling ones. And in my own experiences, I know I've had extraterrestrial visits from the time I was a child. And I also went through an oppression as a pre-adolescence into my adolescence, and they felt very different to me, however, being very intuitive. So I'm thinking, okay, I think I'm under demonic oppression, and I had to get my way out of that because we're going back in time, and we didn't have internet, aging myself a bit, but so I had to figure a lot of this out. It's not like I could just call up a team and say, hey, like the Demonologist by Ed Lorraine Warren became something that I actually studied and went, okay, you know what? Yes, I'm seeing things in here that make sense to me. And I dealt with it from that point. And I'm an advocate of mindset because that's how I taught myself, to get out of the situation.
Right.
But then into adulthood again, over the last, probably few years, I am back full on into extraterrestrial contact. So, and again, it feels different. So I don't know. What do you make of it? I don't know.
I don't ever trust my feelings. I think that, oh, God help us. When we get down into the data, okay, I'll give you a case study of not even mine, a good friend of mine. He's from Rhode Island. He's a researcher, and this is Shane Searway. And he's not as well known. He's not known as he should be. Okay, incredible work. Anyways, we're good friends, and so he contacts me out of the blue. He goes, "I want to tell you my story." I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "I want to share it with you." And this is a guy that he does very few shows, not because he doesn't have offers. He's just very picky.
Chooses. Right, I hear him. I've been the same.
Yeah. I'm getting that point.
It's quality, not quantity.
Exactly. High five.
Yeah,
what's going on?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, okay, Shane, I thought I knew everything about my buddy. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, he goes, here's what got me into this field. He said when he was a kid, he was very sickly, and he was getting sick all of the time. And he's like, and he said one night, he said he was sick again. He's in bed. And he wakes up from a dream. He's looking around. He's got spider webs or cobwebs in his eyes. He's doing this number. And he says he looks in the corner of the room, and there's this alien gray staring at him. And this is where it gets terrifying. He said, next thing I know, I feel myself slipping out of my body. He said, I'm hovering by location over my body. He said, and then something took command over his body. And he said, now I'm looking down at my body, and all of a sudden his body's moving around, and he began to speak a buzzing, chattering, whispering language. And then he said, whatever was in my body looked at me. He said, so now I'm looking directly into my own eyes. So whatever we're dealing with, I do believe that, oh yeah, I got another story for you I've never told you before.
Okay.
We'll talk about it later. But the narrative is very interesting, and the similarities are chilling, Michelle. I mean, if we're dealing with not just possession, I was reading an account from the Collins Elite Research by Nick Redfern. It was a lady by the name of Tammy Stone, and what she realized was that when she experienced even just a UFO, like even just witnessing a UFO, not even being abducted, she said that she witnessed it, she had missing time, and then for the next 5 years, she had no memory of what occurred up until she started having nightmares. And so the nightmares were actually her body and her brain remembering what had happened, which takes us into some uncharted territory. Because what if you follow me? What if some of our nightmares are merely memories of what they've done to us? And if that's the case, the whole field's got to be turned upside down, because holy smokes.
But dreams can be the same. There's that theory where allegedly, we travel when we sleep. Because let's face it, it's like parking a car in the garage. You're not going to sleep in the car 9 times out of 10, right? You're just going to go off and go about your business, go to bed, whatever the case may be. and there are people who believe, like, I mean, it's happened to me, downloads or having recollections, that the whole deja vu thing and something. And I laugh about it. Like, I must have been working double duty last night. I'm freaking exhausted. And then
Yeah.
I start to see similarities, and I start having memories of things. But one thing that my producer Joe, who owns, a huge, ICAR, which is a huge abductee, contactee, documentation site. I mean, there's like almost like 95,000 people on there. The apocalyptic dreams. Apocalyptic dreams is big with contactees and abductees.
Right.
So
Right.
that kind of leads up a little bit to maybe a little bit of what you're talking about, like this nightmarish world that they're in. I don't know.
What's really going on?
Is it Mars?
I don't know.
I mean, is it someplace that that they've been taken, that they've come back from? Is it something that's coming? Is it? I met a woman who swore up and down the whole place is going to go up in flames, planet, everything. She's like, I see this. I dream about it all the time. It's being shown to me. And then I know that this is big for contactees, abductees. So now I'm kind of going, what came first?
Exactly right.
So,
there's a hypothesis I heard the other day that you might like.
Okay. I say just put it out there.
Put it out there. That's what we're about.
Yeah.
The hypothesis was very interesting because I have no evidence contrary to it.
Okay.
And it was dealing with the fact that, like you said, many abductees come back trying to protect the earth, preserve wildlife, all of that. And what it comes down to is preserving a planet. And the theory was that we're not preserving the planet for us, that they're making us preserve the planet for them. I can't deny that. There's no evidence contrary. And so we become little worker bees who are preserving a space for them to at that point, okay, now we take the planet. But I'm not sure, everything's on the table at this point.
Well,
We're still wanting to know.
I mean, let's face it, we're not the first kick of the can on the evolutionary scale. The planet has been through a few purges. We've seen come on, we're digging up things with ancient civilizations. I mean, some things like 250 million years old. We know we are not the first to be here. Are we preserving the planet for the next generation, for the next species? How do we know they're not already here?
Ooh, the hybrid aspect.
Well, no, I mean, for sure we know that it's happening. But what about the fact that whenever we think of ET, we think to the stars? What about the ones like the Hopi who are saying no, they went underground? Like, how do we know they're not here in the ocean, subterranean, in the mountains?
That's a very good question. I think that knowing the depths of the ocean and how much of it has just been untapped potential, they could very easily be there. I mean, we have evidence of UFOs coming out of water, and being transmitted, going back in the water.
Yeah,
I don't know. Okay, let's go down there for a second. See, one of my good friends, Jeff Kingsbury from Strange Recon, very controversial. I love the guy. He's killing ufology, in a good way. His question is, look, I'm a former DARPA, which he was. And a couple of years back, he went on Jimmy Church and everybody was giving him crap because he's like, look, I know for a fact that these UFOs that swarmed our ships. He's like, no, he goes, that's technology we have. He's like, I worked on it.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And nobody wants to say that because
Nope.
everybody wants this thing to be woo-woo and loosh and all that stuff. But here's the facts. And he said, no, he said the evidence suggests, this wasn't a guy, and I hate to say it like this, but he's qualified. He's former DARPA. He didn't work at Jimmy John's and then suddenly have opinion. This guy was there. Not that against Jimmy John's, but
yeah.
So he comes out and says, look, guys, he goes, by all evidence that this is technology we have. Yeah, and he's like, I think that the federal government is claiming they're UFOs, so they don't have to answer for the fact that drones, which we just have one right now over Montana in the States, a balloon, and he's like, look, we don't want to admit that they're here. There are aspects of the phenomenon that they're ours, but I would also suggest this. Okay, my brother is kind of like a website designer, engineer guy. Okay, He can do all that stuff. He was working with Mark D'Antonio, and he was working with Mark D'Antonio and Christopher O'Brien. Yeah, and what they were doing is in the Utah Basin, they were taking hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of cameras, and they were placing them strategically, just like they did on Skinwalker Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
And what they were doing is, they were sending my brother footage that they had received. And in one of the videos, there is a very obvious UFO. And I mean unidentified as it can possibly get. But the entity, and this is what I'm going to call it. This will freak you out. This freaked me out. My skin crawled. I'm like, oh. I'm like, no. Because when I watched it, you see it in the air, and it contorts itself to where it looked like a plane. And their theory was that it was an organic, biological entity. Mm-hmm. And it was mimicking the flight patterns and the position and imagery of a plane. An entity. I've never heard of that. Ever. An entity flying around, mimicking the flight paths of 757s and airplanes. So, are these things biological? Are these entities in themselves? Which is very interesting.
Well, I mean, there's a belief that a lot of extraterrestrial beings actually become one with their ship, that they're both biological beings, that they actually, just place their hands onto them. And so, they become one. This is how they telepathically work the ship. So if something happens to the ship and then into the being, is stuck inside, then chances are, one dies, the other one dies. It's, there's a lot of theories with that as well. Let me just get to a couple comments. I've often had apocalyptic dreams, and the scenery is always orange-red with an orange-red hue. There are roads and buildings, and more are in bad shape. I know you have them. You're a typical, I always say that damn abductee right there. It's like, yeah, I know it. Hey, Steve, good evening. Question. Do you think the world is ready to observe a UFO mothership landing in places like New York, LA, and so on? Do you think panic would set in, remembering the War of the Worlds? There were a lot of people in panic mode at that point. And to add a spin on that, do you think movies like that add to the panic?
Yeah, it's called predictive programming.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't think that we're ready for disclosure. I think the government knows more than they're telling us, obviously.
For sure.
And that they're just giving us little pieces, even to the degree. And I talked to, Steve Mayer about this about a year or two ago. Because I stay up, like I told you before, I stay up all night, and I'm like, okay, what time is it in Britain or Ireland, right? And I'll hit him up, hey, man, I don't want to. And so I hit him up one day. I said, man, what's going on? What did, you work with the federal government over there. What do you think? They said it's demons of old. Straight up. And I think that more and more, I mean, again, we have to define what a demon is, because I don't think Catholicism, I don't know. But more and more researchers here in the States, especially even Travis Taylor, the scientist who's going into the gifting field at Skinwalker Ranch in New Mexico, he converted to Catholicism because what he thinks is happening. Now, if there are more and more in the States who, I'm talking about movers and pushers and kingmakers in the field, if what they have been exposed to has inspired them to make a religious commitment, they're not signing up for AAA here, right? They're not signing up for gym memberships because, no, what they're literally doing is making a spiritual covenant, almost as if, and I'm just going to say this because I do believe there's some resonance here, almost as if what they've been told and shown that they can't tell anybody else speaks to an Armageddon apocalyptic scenario, or at the very least, the idea that we are dealing with entities who are not very good dudes, right? So what they're doing is they're clinging to religion. I want to make sure I'm right because there's an upcoming war. I think that's alarming because, again, they don't have to say things to say things.
Oh, actions speak louder than words. I mean, the church itself, the Vatican itself, is going to great lengths to prepare the flock, so to speak. of this potentially being a thing. Because let's face it, I mean, people have been suppressed by the institution. I don't want to say like I look at religion, I look at faith as being faith, and the faithful as your belief system. I look at religion itself as being more of an institutionalized thing, because it's the rules, regulations, the thou shall not, blah blah blah, right? And again, don't shoot the messenger. I just can't remember them all. but with that, yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm old,
Michelle.
but I know it'll happen. It'll happen.
I've
But
had it happen.
but I mean, we've been conditioned to have certain beliefs that are outside. Like we're very inside of a box, and these beliefs are very outside of the box. Now it's almost like they're coming forward because Pope Francis has said, no, we want to have a disclosure, not just of what's out there. Because let's face it, they have a huge astronomy program. They're looking for UFOs. They're looking for something, and they're preparing for some kind of a cosmic savior sort of thing, which leads which leads to another belief that people are starting a perception that people are starting to question. Was Jesus an extraterrestrial? Because there's good and there's bad, right? We have our angels, we have our demons, there's good, there's bad. Because of all the things that he could do, they figured was at least, if he was an extraterrestrial, was extraterrestrial knowledge. Let's face it, Enoch, Ezekiel, it's not like, it's not like this sort of thing hasn't been around going back thousands of years.
Yeah, absolutely. You get into the Immaculate Conception. Was that God's seed, or because he's a spirit? Right? Is that it? I mean, we would consider that to be an incubi entity, and I hate to say it like this, but groomed a woman, or until there's consent, and next thing you know, she's pregnant, and it's Immaculate Conception. And then we get into the incubi literature, where how can a virgin be pregnant? We see that oftentimes in the UFO.
There's over 500 accounts of virgin births throughout like thousands of years. And again, don't shoot the messenger, people. You could find all this stuff, But I mean, and it's not to shake anybody's faith, because we don't know the answers until we get there. Really, it's your faith that tells you what what you should believe, or the institution does. Your faith inside tells you. This is where you have to rely on yourself and your own senses as to how it makes you feel. Whenever we're dealing with people who are going through, really malevolent hauntings or demonic attachments, it's the mindset and the faith that empowers you to fight back. We are very strong. People have a hard time believing that we are very powerful individuals. People are miracles in many ways. There's Saul. Hello. Church is trying to continue to deceive us. They assimilate every culture around the world, taking their beliefs and integrating it into the church itself. It's been going on for thousands of years, right? Centuries and centuries and centuries. So I guess it comes down to, if we go back into the Gnostic times, and you're dealing with archons, I mean, these are people who are very aware of the stars, and they follow the stars like many ancient people did. But they knew archons were evil beings that had never been here. And you see different depictions of archons, and some people will show grays. Like some images are that of grays, and some images are that of something more malevolent. So, what's that?
I am, the more I do the research, the more I'm kind of leaning towards, I'm not going to go as far as Barry Fitzgerald in terms of, okay, I believe it's one entity. I believe that to a sense. And I love Dr. Barry Fitzgerald. I think that we are dealing with a single origin, and that the phenomenon, and this is going to sound like a lot of like Brian Allan's work too, the phenomenon has masked itself for thousands of years according to its morality, according to what it wants to do to and with us. And I did a lecture on Leak Project a while ago talking about how these beings can mimic the dead. And not just that, but knowing the very clothes they died in, which that's uncomfortable. You know, I was talking to Paul Sinclair. We're talking about Whitley Strieber. Strieber is in the middle of an abduction account, and he sees these beings, and he looks over, and there's one of his friends that had died years back with him.
See, right
What
there.
in the heck is going on? You know, and it does point to the fact that these are interdimensional beings. I mean, we've never thought in our life, oh my God, I die, and then, or somebody dies and they go to another planet. That's never been on the table. So it's almost, and I'll even go further, because I think the evidence does suggest this, especially in UFO abduction phenomenon, is that these people that are being abducted out of their body, it's almost like they're being primed to be taken after death. But Betty Luca. Yeah, Betty Luca was taken out of her body. Her husband watched as her apparition was peeled, just laying down in bed at night. And when they had her, they put her in this is really interesting too, because now we're getting to apparitional theory, constitution of consciousness. So they put her apparition in a seat. What? A tangible seat. They placed her softly in the chair and taught her apparition, or her soul, whatever we want to call it. They taught her how to fly the craft. Now, they were not teaching her muscle memory. And she never flew a craft in her body. And then before they put her, this is scary stuff. And before they put her back in her body, they told her, you will not remember a lot of this. And so she's back in her body, and there's an intellectual war occurring. There's cognitive dissonance occurring because her body was never trained to fly the craft, but her consciousness remembers a little bit of it. And we see this over and over again with abductees. And I'm telling you, the field needs to pay a quick attention to what's occurring, because it does appear that these beings are training souls for the afterlife. In other words, these are what we call dream demons. I'm starting to ramble now, Michelle.
No, it's okay, man. Keep going. I'm following.
In demonological literature, and the idea was that when a person dies, that there are entities that will capture the soul and
recycle them. Is it a recycling?
Exactly right. No, it's scary. It is terrifying, because no wonder Chris Bledsoe's on the ship. It says there's a soul here. Why? And is that soul a human being? Is that why? Is that why these experiencers are being abducted, and they see a bunch of grays, biological avatars running about to and fro, and then all of a sudden there is a dead person there? And is that dead? I don't know.
You hear of it. You hear the different theories with these sort of souls. For example, dimensional, right? We live simultaneous lives, but we look different in each and every one of them. So it's believed that when you get this dimensional bleed through, courtesy of my producer Joe, when you get a dimensional bleed through, that you are in fact maybe looking at one of your loved ones who is coming through, died in this life, but maybe still really active in another life. And maybe their hair will be different, or their eyes or their clothes will be different. But on the flip side of that, it happens, they say, like if you have it like a demonic entity is just trying to mimic a loved one, that there will be something different about them as well, that they don't look the same. Now, let's take it a step further. My father went into a retirement living, extended care, probably about 2 years ago. My mother swore, my mother's completely of sound mind, as sharp as a tack, 2 occasions that she was laying in bed and she looked over and my father was sitting there and he didn't look right, but she could touch him. And he looked, she goes, his clothes looked just a little bit too big for him. And I'm just like,
oh God.
See what I'm saying? Like, there's 3 examples there. And I know someone who also was going through some kind of a of an abduction, a family member.
Mm-hmm.
And he recalls hitting the top of the ceiling, and he could feel himself being pulled through a window, and then he grabbed it. This is him. This wasn't looking down at his body, because he grabbed onto the window, and he goes, it was the strangest thing. I was going through. It's like it didn't exist, but there was a resistance.
Whoa.
And finally it just stopped, and he dropped to the floor. So I don't
know. What the H, Michelle? What
I don't
the
know,
H?
right? I know. Like, this is like a
What?
bit of what you're saying, and it's all stuff that there's so many similarities between the two that keep crossing over.
Interconnectivities, and the phenomenon has a pattern of layering itself, right? It's, it's like a dish of some casserole.
Right, right. I'm just going to put up comments while you talk.
Okay. I'll give you two case studies. It's very interesting.
Right.
Back to Strange Recon, there was a lady that follows my work, and she had a show that I did talking about how these beings will mimic husbands or lovers, right?
Right.
Someone that the woman has been intimate with. And she's like, look, I got to tell Nathaniel my story. So okay, so we're in the green room, and he's pulling up her email, and her story was frightening. She said that she was in bed one night, and I'm not going to get weird or anything off color, but I'm just going to make it plain. Anyway, so she says her husband, or at least she thought, was standing over by her at the end of the bed.
Right.
And, he was feeling randy, and, bang, bang, bang. Next thing she knows, she's looking at him. And like you said, there were some indications of deception, because he was making facial features he's never made, or facial expressions never made before. And his body language, his posture was different. Everything. I mean, it looked the part. God, this is crazy. It's crazy. But the way he moved and everything was completely different and alien to her. And then she said, this is crazy. She said, Nathaniel, I'm looking at his facial features. And she said, when he moved, it was almost like a frequency where he moved the left, and the image had to catch up. And stuff. Yes.
Like a delayed.
Right. Right. And she said, that's when I realized. I'm sorry.
It's like a reality, like a.
Oh my God, this gets creepy. And I have another story after this. But this is good research. So, anyways, she's like, "Oh my God, this is not my husband." And when she looked at him, as she's acknowledging this, he starts laughing at her, and then his entire image just began to deconstruct until he was a wispy black smoke. And then he flew out through the door to the hallway. And then she realized, my husband has been asleep beside me. And then she says this, and I knew he was. The entity had constructed an entire theatrical performance, induced her into some suspended animation of belief, or I don't even know the vocabulary that's correct to use. But the point is that it had deceived her to such a degree where when she came back to herself, she was like, I knew he was beside me the whole time. But who caused me to forget? The being did.
Right. Right.
Very scary stuff. Very scary stuff.
Tamara says, what if the Mandela effect is because we have been put in a different reality? How do we know? I mean, CERN, how do we know we haven't been pushed into an alternate reality?
Right. Right.
And we're dealing
everything's on the table.
Yeah. I don't know. It's really bizarre. There's so many different theories with just like, I mean, let's face it, they can manifest into anything. I think it's just trying to have it definitive, if it's even possible. Definitive, I mean, proof. I mean, we can't prove anything. Everything is pretty much
Correct.
theoretical, right? But
Mhm.
to put that kind of a connection together, it's really difficult. People believe in angels, people believe in demons. For some reason, that's very easy for many people to
Right.
believe in. Throw extraterrestrials into the mix, you
Mhm.
know, it's really difficult to say, well, here's your culprits. In the world of spiritualism, angels and demons. In the world of ufologies, reptilians and Palladians. You know,
Right.
who
Right.
knows? But to put them as all one of the same makes that's really hard to swallow for a lot of people.
I think it is because they like to compartmentalize the phenomenon. I think that's been the issue with the paranormal field for a long, long time.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, if I mean, let's put it like this. Okay, so what I've been trying to do is get into ufology, do more shows on, ufology and
Yeah,
more beyond more shows about ufology. So I'm
right,
talking to all these ufologists and all this stuff, and I'm approaching it from not a very religious aspect, but a demonological aspect. What's up,
right.
pros or pros? Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and so the problem is this. I mean, we have cases. Now, here's something interesting where the person is experiencing the classic abduction to a
Right.
T. Everything is an abduction, and all of a sudden they'll see a gray, and then the gray will turn aside, and the person realizes he's looking at technology,
Right.
and that the gray image that he saw, the cognitive interface, was a lie. That's not at all what the being looked like.
Hmm.
And so now we're looking at what's behind the image. And
Mm.
so that's what we're getting back to, masks and mirrors.
Hmm.
Here's one for you. I was reading about Dr. Carla Turner and a psychic that she had worked with. His name was Ted Rice. And, excuse me. And for years, Ted Rice, I think it was 26 to 30 years, Ted Rice was working with his guides, right? And his
Mm.
guides were giving him insights, prophecies, knowledge that he had no access to outside of them. And for like 30 years, I'm a psychic, blah, 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 blah. And then he's abducted by his guides. And his guides tried to have coition or copulate, rather, with his grandmother. And then he realized that for 30 years, these beings were manipulating me. So they played the long game,
Mm. Mm.
which, if they
Mm.
have that kind of time on their hands, we don't have a chance.
But they do. That's
Yeah,
just it. They do. Like time is endless for many,
right.
of these interdimensional or dimensional beings. Marisol says the star people are here, and honestly, I don't believe that all of the Shining One or the Watchers, because I have seen things appear to me, and thank goodness I've had a camera to capture images.
Mhm.
It's amazing the things I've experienced that it shattered my programming. Well, and yeah, back to the wizard behind the
Back to the wizard.
curtain. Yeah, but
Exactly. Is the hands inside the puppet, and we're measuring. We're even measuring
hmm
the puppet
right.
without understanding there's a hand in it,
Hmm.
and that's exactly right. And I'll
But
shut
I
up.
also like Marisol's comment about shattering my programming.
Right.
We're programmed from the time we're pretty much born. The way we're
Mhm.
taught, the way we're interacted with. As parents, we interact a certain way, the way we were taught,
Mhm.
and our belief system, goes on to the next generation. And you know, I mean, my kids are always like way out there because they're very gifted, and just
Mhm.
like like my middle son's like was always wise,
Mhm.
beyond his years, and he could see interdimensionally as a
Mhm.
child. He would say, "Do you see this? Do you see this?" I'm like, "I was haunted. I know it." And I'm not picking up a thing.
You're
Like,
like,
I
I did
know.
see it, but I'm not talking about it. Yeah, I got you.
I know. But the thing that was interesting to me is he used to see people who were alive. And he'd say, I can see this person right here, right now. And I'm going, that person's still living. And,
Oh,
and I
okay.
didn't understand how. It had to be dimensional. So,
Well, I have a story for you about that, if I could tell you.
yes, you feel free.
Weird as heck, weird as heck. So I was in a restaurant one time. Actually, no. Okay. So it was right after I had the case of the murder, right? And for those who has never heard of the story, I was out to dinner one night, sitting down reading a book, and I get a private message from a person that thinks that they're talking to my dad. They're talking to me. My dad's a pastor, so they're like Pastor Gillis, and I'm thinking, what? And so they're like, Pastor Gillis would like you to come to our house. We've had a tragedy. Would like you to come and pray. And so I share it to my dad. My dad's like, look, I'm willing to go over there. What time? What's the address? All that. Zero context, by the way. Just come and pray for us. We had a tragedy. Not real in depth. And next thing I know, they're like, listen, well, the reason we want you to come and pray is because there's been a lot of paranormal activity. And my dad was kind of like, nope, that's what you do, Nate, right? So I'm like, okay, so I'll go. Well, come to find out, when I got there, there was an atheist that met me at the door. I don't believe in what you do, Nate. First of all, it's not Nate. You can call me Nate, Michelle, because we're buddies. This guy don't know me from Adam. It's not Nate. That's a little bit disrespectful. Anyways, I don't believe. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in spirits. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in supernatural. I'm just here supporting my best friend. Well, I walked up in the house, and they had just cut up the carpet from a murder that occurred 2 weeks prior. Hey, real stuff. Real stuff. And I'm looking around. Everything's not adding up, and I'm just thinking, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? What had happened, and I'll finish the story and it'll make sense. But what had happened was this family had a 12-year-old daughter, and she got really, really tight and really, really good friends with a 15-year-old at school. And they both conspired to kill the 12-year-old's family.
Oh, wow.
The family, they were watching television at 2 o'clock in the morning, Michelle. And the husband, he was disabled. He's a veteran. And so, anyways, he's like, man, he goes, Nathaniel, he goes, me and my wife are watching television. He's like, my wife works second shift, so we stay up in the wee hours of the morning catching up and watching TV. He's like, we look out the window, and there's that 15-year-old girl staring at us. 2 in the morning, staring at us. Finally, he's like, we called the cops. She left, and we put a restraining order on her. Anyways, he said one night, he's like, we're watching television again. It was a school night. He said, my daughter walks downstairs, and I said, hey, baby girl, what you doing? You get some water? We got some new Pepsi in there or something. He said, no, it's not what happened. She walks up to the door, opens the front door, and in comes a 15-year-old with stub-nosed scissors and a knife, and a male. This is people think, God, never mind, I don't want to ramble. But a male disembodied voice was coming out of her. Her mouth wasn't moving. It was it coming out of her. And she killed the mother. And that was the blood that they had to cut out of the carpet all the way down to the foundation. Next thing I know, I'm there. And I'm thinking, oh my God. Well, I did the cleansing. Really fascinating stuff. It was almost like it got real hot. The husband, the man, he's doing this number. You ever seen anybody do that in the cleansing? Oh my God, it's hot. It's hot. Get it off me. Anyway, so did the cleansing. A few months later, I'm at the same restaurant, same time, sitting at the same seat I was when I got the message months back. A lady and her husband sit next to me. And you know how it is. Well, I read a lot. I read everywhere. Okay. Next thing I know, this lady's looking over me, and actually looking over her husband, looking at me like that. And I knew, oh my God, here it comes. Now, who am I going to be today? I'm not going to be a demonologist. I'll be a plumber, right? I don't want to tell him, but
everything but that. Yeah,
that's exactly right. So she switches seats with me. We get to talking, and she's like, "So what do you do?" I kind of go into it a bit. I say, I research phenomenon and paranormal and everything, and before I could even get it out, she goes, "You're Nathaniel Gillis, aren't you?" I swear to God, I'm thinking, what?
No.
Yeah, right. I'm not
No,
today,
I'm not.
don't you know? I'm Jim Bob. I'm Jim Bob the barber, right? She goes, no. She goes, I know you. I'm like, how do you know me? She goes, I can't tell you. 45 minutes later, she had a couple drinks in her. Then she breaks down. You know how I know who you are? I said, why? How do you know? She goes, because you did a cleansing. She said, and I'm the social worker that's been working with the 15-year-old and the 12-year-old girl. She said, come on, what's up? Come on. I love it. She said, the night you did the cleansing, she said, I received a phone call from the jail. And the 12-year-old said, I don't know what happened, but the entity that's been haunting me walked into my jail cell and told me I no longer have authority over you, and it left. Woo! And so I'm sitting there in holy awe, and I'm going, oh my God. Now, to your point, interdimensionality. Let me get a drink of water real quick. As I'm talking to her, I do this number, okay? I go into a trance, and I said, okay, I had a case of the day. I was in the living room, and it was an incubi case. And I'm telling her this, and I said, I saw an apparition of a boy. And I went into it. I said, he's a little boy, his name, and I didn't even tell her his name yet. But I said, and then I went into another trance. I said, and I'm in the back seat of a taxi. And I said, I am in between him and a beautiful little girl, his sister, much younger, maybe about 7 or 8. And I said, and we're in this massive city. I said, I don't know where I'm looking at. I said, but we're in the backseat of a taxi, and all I see are skyscrapers. When I did that, she starts shaking. She grabs her husband by the hand, and I said, I don't know who I'm seeing. Same woman, mind you. I said, I don't know what I'm seeing. I said, but there was a boy. I said, you worked in, what is it, foster care? She goes, yes, I worked in the foster care system. I said, all right. I said, this boy tells me that that you were like a mother to him, and that he misses you and he loves you. I'm talking, dude, tears streaming down her face. And I said, he has a sister. He's about 12 years old when he was taken from you. We get into this whole shebang.
Mm.
And she says, don't tell me his name. And then she's grabbing her husband, holding him. Oh my God, don't tell me his name. And I said, his name, we said at the same time. And she goes, Christopher. When I did that, she almost fainted. She said that she went through was accurate. But she said, he's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that? Right? I had to say all that to get to this point. What was that? Because, I've heard of mediumship. I've heard of, channeling, whatever. But I've never heard of someone like your son, right? This person's still alive, but I'm seeing them, and I'm being given messages for another person.
Mm-hmm.
Very strange.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is very strange. I mean, you're getting into, again, dimensional. Are you dealing with that exact individual? Are you dealing with, they say the soul
Right.
can split. I don't know. It's just one of those things that, again, it comes down to energy, soul energy. And it's, I mean, from what you're saying and the stories you've told tonight, it's become a commodity. Well, hold on. Here we go. Are demons reptiles?
I think the reptilian is just another mask. I mean, these beings have appeared as everything.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lady that told me one time, and this is another very interesting theory, but she was like, I'm in the middle of an abduction, and she called on Jesus, and Jesus manifested, but he wasn't the first century Jewish rabbi with olive skin. It was the sweetest Presbyterian white Jesus that appeared. And what had happened was it had actually kind of pulled an image out of her mind. Is this
Right.
what you think Jesus would look like? Yes. Okay. Then I'll be that person. I had another lady, the same concept, but she did call on Jesus, and Jesus walked up to her in the abduction, held his hand out, and said, all seed is mine. And she said that she was a hybrid mother, but all 6 of her children died in the womb.
Oh.
And she said, I can't help but think that's what he was telling her. You think, and this is the deal with hybrid mothers. That's a whole other show, Michelle. But those aren't their kids.
Wow.
Those belong to them.
Well,
So much.
hybrid mothers do not get to see their children unless they're
Right.
taken to visit with them.
Right. And so let's go down that road. I had a lady that had listened to a show of mine, emailed me, literally pulled her car on the side of a highway, on the shoulder of the highway, in tears. Can I talk to you? And you know how it is. You get a lot of people on the show. Sometimes you can't talk to everybody, and sometimes you don't want to. Well,
Right.
She called me on a good day, and I thought, okay. So we get on the phone together. She's crying. She said, she goes, I've been taken since I was like 12 or 13. She said, as soon as I entered puberty into my womanhood, she said they were monitoring my fertility from a child. And she said they were coming to me. She said, I've had dreams and nightmares and visitations of hybrid babies and all this stuff. I've had gynecological issues my whole life. Then she goes into this number. She said, I had a hysterectomy since my last abduction. And she said that the other night they showed up again, just like they've done hundreds of times. And she said before they wanted to take me, they were looking at my body while I was sleeping. She's like, I could see them looking at my body with their little machines and stuff. And they realized that, and this is her words, she said they realized that I can no longer be a breeder, that I didn't have the functionality to it. And she said they not verbally, but they abused her verbally. In other words, they were
for
mad.
altering herself. Yeah.
Right. Then they left. So again, if we're dealing with a non-threat narrative that it's all lovers and light, then we have to justify things that we wouldn't justify in any other way. Right? I mean, imagine your next door neighbor taking your kid at nighttime. We would have a fit, and we should. Then why have we anointed these beings with some kind of semi-divine right to do what they're doing? I don't know what it means, but they're terrifying.
Well, boy, it's intrusive, first off, I mean, my thing has always been, why do they come in the dead of night when you're asleep, for instance? I mean, that's something that's always sort of bothered me, and it's taken me a while to become somewhat okay with the fact that, okay, whatever, you're here. And I know when they're around. I know when they're around. It's like, okay, whatever, But I mean, there are people who have experiences in broad daylight. I'm like, why can't I have one of those? My boudoir. And it's just like private place, But yeah, and Tamara nails it. Yeah, she goes like, they are called the uninvited for a reason.
100%.
Marisol, why take the children? They took me as a 6-year-old. Like, see, like, there's just that aspect of things that make it really difficult. But then there's the belief, and there's that theory, according to many contactees, that we have these arrangements with them.
Yes.
These contracts where we say, okay, I will work with you, or I will be a keeper, I will be an observer, I will, come on the ship, I will work with others, or I will be a mother, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's another narrative of deception. I had a lady when I was out to eat a few years back, never met her in my life, in North Madam. I don't know if you guys have J. Alexander's or Redlands Grill there in Canada. We have them here in the States, but great food. Anyways, I'm sitting down. She walks over there, sits at my table. This is her explanation. We have a soul contract together.
Yep, I've heard that too. Yeah.
What? I'm trying to eat my filet mignon. We have a soul contract together. And then she said we should mate. That's what she said. We should mate. All right.
So can I wait till after my filet?
Yeah. I got to take myself out to dinner and then. No,
yeah.
Yeah. But this idea, again, it's Jeffrey Dahmer level of deception. And this is, again, in the States, we have researchers that are trying to romanticize trauma. One person is saying, okay, well, especially women, I was sexually assaulted. It was not consensual. They took me. They did things to me, things that I don't even want to tell people. And I had to live with the scars emotionally and physically.
And it's not acceptable here. So why should,
why is it there?
Yeah.
Right. And so anyways, this one researcher in the States, it's laughable. He goes on and on, we made these decisions for ourselves. But you know who told us that first? Not us. They did. And it's no different than a serial killer, psychopathy, who does something really sadistic and then looks at him and says, you made me do that. I'm sorry. It's a Jeffrey Dahmer level of mind control. But I don't believe that at all. I mean,
it's so hard because I mean, I believe, I've encountered, many malevolent and demonic entities. Like, I've been working in this field for like a couple of decades. I know what they feel like. I know there are some degree of ETs that make me feel a bit, but I know that there are others that I've been around that are unbelievable. Like, I think to myself, how could an evil energy that, that the personified heaviness, negative, evil, portray something just so loving?
Right. They can manipulate pretty much whatever they want to. Let's just talk about it. I mean, our perceptions of them and our emotions. I was listening to David Jacobs the other day. Excuse me, Dr. Jacobs was talking about how these beings can stare into the eyes, which we've talked about that in the other shows, where they'll stare into the eyes of the victim and create a sexual scenario just by looking at them. And so, but let's go back to the 16th century, because women were being induced into dream states, and during their dream, they would be accosted by an entity, and then they would wake up the next day thinking, okay, that was a nightmare, no big deal. But Michelle, they had ligature marks on their hands and feet, and bruisings that were the exact mirror of what they experienced in the dream. And so, what's going on, Corrine? Thank you for joining us. And so they're thinking, oh my God, it's just a dream, no big deal. And then they look at their wrists and their feet, and they have bruises and ligature marks. They start to realize something, that they were convinced it was a dream, it was real. So what we're dealing with is
so you're saying it's mindset, it's what they're implanting memories, or they're
100%.
right.
And this goes back to that experiencer who she started to remember, but she remembered her nightmares and humanity. I think about that. It's a bad dream. No, it's not. It's actually your body and your brain remembering what actually occurred to you.
Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow, because you have implanted memories, false memories. That's a common thing. There are people who wake up and go under hypnosis, and it's like it's nothing like what they thought their life was, or who they were, or sometimes it's like it's a good thing they get good information. Other times it's like, am I in the twilight zone? Like, what just happened?
Exactly right.
Right.
What did I give consent to when I was under the influence? Let's put it that way, shall we?
Okay.
Right.
That's a good spin. Take it.
Yeah. I mean, I can't possibly give consent if I'm being deceived, and there are certain entities that are manipulating my perception of reality. I cannot possibly give consent, because my consent is based on my perception, and what they're doing is they're manipulating perception, and they're also shared memories. Like, okay, going back to the 16th century, these women that were waking up with ligature marks, they were being inseminated with a fetus. It's the missing fetus syndrome. And but it wasn't just that, but they were also being possessed by consciousness. And so they were waking up out of the nightmare with ligature marks and so on and so forth, what we just talked about. But even more than that, they were having shared memories where, like, one lady woke up, she's like, oh my God, I have a craving for a baguette. And she's like, I remember walking in the streets of France, but I've never been to France in my life. So whose consciousness, is it, okay, are these shared memories in the sense that many of these are screen memories, like Dr. Carla Turner mentioned, or is it literally a consciousness that has its own memories? And the victims are being possessed in a sense, and what they're realizing is you have two consciousnesses, one body. And so the body's, you follow me, the body's remembering different memories that don't belong. I've never been to Paris, but why do I remember it? Because it's not you. Right?
But the body's got some kind of an imprinting, but it's another essence in the body. Is that so?
Just throwing this out there. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm just trying to get it straight. So yeah, that's the
entity. That's the entity. And what's happening is, and this is what happened in the 16th century, where the women were like, oh my God, why do I remember this? I never went to Paris. No, because your body's remembering that entity's memories. And that was the idea, where these beings inseminated women to create biological avatars to possess. I was talking to Malia about this a while ago.
Yeah.
Because Amelia, I'm sorry, yeah, but yeah, because what they were doing in the 16th century was okay. They were inseminating with the fetus, but they were also placing their consciousness in that fetus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then at a certain time frame, the fetus was taken, as well as the consciousness. And so early demonologists were like, "Wait a minute. The only thing we can think of is that these beings were placing fetuses and then placing consciousness in the fetus. And then when they took the fetus out, so also was the consciousness gone."
Mm.
And anyways, I'll shut up.
Yeah, this is a good one. You have an oversoul that exists in several realities all at once. Yeah, we spoke about that earlier. And if you mix them up, your physical reality can become confused. I could see that.
100%.
I could see that. I had a guest on the show at one time who basically said to me that she knew for certain, without getting into a lot of detail, that essences can indeed be harvested. They can indeed be, from, and again, without getting the tin hat on, going, okay, who's doing it?
Right.
It's actually happening. And more, it's more rampant. Like there are people on this planet, allegedly, that know how to do this. And just, you can just pick it up, put it someplace else. So it's obviously, like from what you're saying, it's almost sounding like this is a commodity.
Oh, yeah, I call it the currency of consciousness. Right. And so it's not just the essence, but it's the attributes even. And then this gets into parasitic entities where, we're hosts for them, their consciousness and what they're doing with us. And they've told us that much in abductions. You're just a vessel. No, nothing more, nothing less.
So do you think this is why, because if we're going by this theory, do you think that's why humanity is actually created for something even bigger?
Right. I could say this. This is very dark, and I've shared this only at one time. But I was doing really, really deep research one night, and what I usually do, people ask me this, to disconnect, I watch Frasier. You've seen my Facebook post. Big Frasier fan. All right, I'm listening. Toss salad, scrambled eggs. Anyways, and then I'll watch like Seinfeld or even cartoons from my youth to kind of unwind, right? Just, a lot of this stuff is so dark. I don't want anything to do with it at a certain point. Well, I was done on the research and I had watched cartoons or Frasier, I forget which one. I'm asleep. And from my youth, you know how it is. When you're being spiritually attacked during a dream, it's completely different. It's not like you ate a bad bean burrito from Taco Bell. It's legitimate, right? It's something there. It's not heartburn. There's a malevolent entity there. And I was in the middle of a dream, and it was an attack. But the dream was very unique, and it was horrific in the sense because I was on a ship, massive, massive ship, but it was almost like a prison ship, like Alcatraz. And I was being ushered by the humanoid person through different rooms. And I'm looking at these people, and there were people there. Oh, this is going to freak you out, Michelle. Who did not understand how to get out of that matrix. How do I get out of this ship? What am I going to do? And I can remember one man trying to commit suicide, Michelle, to get out. But he didn't realize that he was already dead. And he's trying to get out. And he's doing this over and over and over again, not realizing, whoa, this is not what it used to be. I am dead. I can't get any more dead. I can't get deader, if that's even grammatically correct.
I can't get dead again. Yeah.
Yes. But the hopelessness, the frantic PTSD of realizing, and this gets back to what you're talking about, that I was created for this. They're the ones that hatched my consciousness. out of my body at death, and they took me. Now, these experiencers, there was one guy in the Collins Elite Research. He was a guitar player, and he had an experience. It was a near-death experience, a cataclysmic event in his life. And he said he was out of his body, and he's met by these beings. These beings tell him, listen, your doctors do not have the ability to heal your body. They said, we do. And it was his soul. Like he said, I'm out of my body.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking down at my body, and then all of a sudden this electricity sucked me up. But they told him, they said, you have two options. You can die and we can take you. What? Or you could become our prophet, and we'll fix you back together again, put your soul back in your body. They said, but you're going to do and say what we want you to. Live your life, but there's going to be a day when we come knocking on your door. Now, they my God, the implications here are disturbing, because how many people said no?
Mm-hmm.
And we've long buried the bodies, and they have their souls.
Okay, there's theories with that also.
Yeah.
I mean, it's believed that obviously when we die, we're not limited to just planet Earth. Our essence could reincarnate or go anywhere where there is life. It would just look different. Okay, theory one. Then there's this other theory that I've seen surface a few times, and there's, how we're conditioned to fear the darkness, and we are conditioned to go down the tunnel, go to the light, go to the light. Okay, well, it's said by people who have even called themselves time travelers who have come forward. You get little bits and pieces, and there have been people who've communicated with the dead, and the dead have said the same thing, where they say, go to the darkness, don't go to the light, because the light will recycle you. The darkness, this is these people who are said to travel and such. It's because they broke out of that. So what do you think?
I don't know, because I remember hearing that theory in Art Bell back in the day.
Right
on the other side of the Rockies, and somebody I was like, yeah, he talked about that, like, don't go into the light. I think even John Lear mentioned that. I don't know, but I think
it's freaky though, because it goes back to that we're conditioned from the time that we're this big. You know what I'm saying?
There's another word that starts with, but it's really bad. If you're being attacked on a dream.
No, I remember that stuff all the time. So I'm attacked. I full on remember it, and I feel it.
Chris, man. All right. So I have another story to tell you. Thanks, bud. Appreciate that, man. Here's a story for you, Michelle. This will get your mind working. So, believe it or not, I used to have a relationship. I used to be married for like 6 months. But before that, I was engaged to her. Beautiful, beautiful girl. Anyways, I was working second shift, so I get back to my apartment one night, and we eat and everything. We watch a couple shows. We go to bed. So this is even before I got into the field, right? Never done a podcast. I'm doing research, mind you, but nobody had any idea who Nathaniel Gillis was. Anyways, I'm in the middle of a dream, and in the dream, there is a shadow figure, a featureless, female-looking shadow figure, Michelle, and she's straddling me. Now, this was different than a succubi, right? Because I wasn't, Randy. I was just, I don't know what you guys said. Yeah, you know what I mean?
We'll leave it there.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Okay, the family show. No, I'm kidding.
Right, yeah. Randy, that's just the name of a guy. No, but, I'm laying there, and in this dream, I'm fighting her off of me. Like, I'm trying to get her, and I can't reach her and all this. My hand's going through and all this. She's not there. And I taught myself a control mechanism in my youth, because I'd suffered through so many nightmares, rather. So I'm like, okay, there's always an open door. I'm going to wake myself up. Well, when I do, she was physically on me. I wake up out of a dream, and it's in the middle of the night. I'm doing this number, and I look, and I'm looking, and she's there on top of me. And I look at her, and I could see her hair moving back and forth.
Mm.
And I realized that, oh my God, this gets back to nightmares, right? What I realized was, oh my God, there's only two possibilities. They use this world to get into my dream state, or they use my dream state as a portal to get into this world, because it wasn't just a dream. She was literally, oh, knocked my hat off. She's literally on top of me. And at that point, I'm going, Ellie, it's my ex. Ellie, is that you?
And she's probably not even able to hear you. She's probably dead to the world.
Right. I started doing this number because I'm freaking the heck out. Because I literally, okay, that's Ellie. What is she doing? You know what I mean? It's 4 a.m. What do you think? No, I finally wake her up, and when I did, she's going, "Who's that?"
She saw her?
Yes, and then this being just one leg over the other, and then just faded away in the darkness. So, oh my God, what? It was there.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
right.
Well, I don't know. Says maybe between the realms of contacting and communicating with extraterrestrials, you're going through realms of evil to reach them, and that could be why you encounter that type of manipulation.
Correct. Barry Fitzgerald told me, "Don't shine so bright as they'll see you."
Wayne says, I had a dream where I met a tall, thin female with long, straight black hair. She wore a brown, sparkling dress. She had huge, bright blue eyes. She told me this world had been created for us.
Right. Ooh. For us or them?
Created, well, for us. So it sort of makes me feel like that, that little lab rat syndrome. Like,
oh God, I know, right?
We're like on the board game, you know what I mean? Just, so what the heck?
Dr. Carly Turner.
It's not the first time I've heard that theory.
Oh, no. It's the...
He has an unbelievable
cattle hypothesis.
Yeah.
I would love to hear more about him. Yeah, it's the cattle hypothesis. And this also checks the box. There's researchers out there like, if they're such a threat, why haven't they invaded us? They don't want to invade us like we think they do. We are living in a symbiotic relationship. That's like saying, okay, if we're a threat to cattle, why don't we kill all cattle? We don't. We keep them alive. We kill some, but we keep them alive as a species. Right.
Well,
because it's a symbiotic relationship.
Is it the energy? Energy is food.
Yeah.
Negative energy is food. That's a real big theory right there.
Yes, and I do believe there is some evidence of them hatching consciousness and taking it for themselves. And I'm going to go even deeper.
Can we hold that thought 1 sec? I have to do a station ID. Okay, because I'm going to get in trouble if I don't do this right now. Okay. I know. Okay, so for those just tuning in, you're listening to the Outer Realm Radio. You are... Hey, well, you're being made privy to some pretty interesting conversation with Nathaniel Gillis and I, so it's a good time to tune in. We are broadcasting live right here in the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network 105.3 and 107.7 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans, and we are on Roku as well, people. So we're fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee, who have basically been with us since day one. So thank you, Folgers. Big thank you to Justin Snicker, Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, for his sponsorship and basically our intro and outro. So that's the voice you hear, the music you hear. You can check him out on Bandcamp, Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, you name it. Also, big thank you to horror genre artist Steve McGinnis, who is responsible for all of the artwork behind the Outer Realm, does a lot of commission pieces and has a lot of really unbelievable stuff that's always ready to go. Check him out on Instagram and on Facebook. So now back to business. Okay, so I'm just going to go a little bit further with Wayne's comment that you would like to know a little bit more. I asked if it was an illusion. She said no. not as you might understand it to be, but it's a physical creation to allow our kind to experience a physical existence. But our kind is that including like us? Is this our kind, or is our kind somebody out there? Apparently, we had evolved to a point where we no longer needed a physical
Good
form.
stuff. I
But
like
this
this Wayne guy, Michelle. I like this Wayne guy.
but was millions of years ago, and it was unclear as to whether we could reintegrate into the physical form again. Yeah, I tell you, man, I got some crazy stuff going on.
I love it. I love it. That's a good brain right there.
All right,
I love the
so
way things.
go ahead, and then we'll keep going. Your
Okay,
story.
so in biblical antiquity, we have the Genesis 6 narrative, and there's a lot of evangelical researchers that are doing big time conferences, huge conferences, thousands of people.
Right.
But what people need to understand is I've been doing this research since I was a kid. I had access to scholars. My dad was flying in from Israel.
Right.
Right. So we're having dinner, and I'm poking their brain. Okay, hey, we're picking their brain. What do you think about this? Here's something very interesting that I think a lot of researchers are missing. That in Genesis 6, these women were not just pregnant with a hybrid baby, Michelle. They were pregnant with a fallen angel.
Okay, so you're looking at the whole Nephilim.
Yes. Now what I'm doing is I'm getting very deep down to the raw data of the missing fetus syndrome hybridization program.
Okay.
So it's occurring in Genesis 6. That's the same thing that's occurring now. And in my book, The Skin That Crawls, I make a very valid point. If the angels fell in Genesis 6 by virtue of inseminating women and all that stuff, then they're still falling because they're still doing it to this day, which completely destroys the narrative of, okay, they all fell once. You know what I mean?
Right.
No, evidently they're still falling because they're doing it to everybody, whatever. But the point that I'm making here is very, very interesting to me. It's not that the women were pregnant with fetuses. It's that, what's up, dude? I appreciate it, brother.
Then you need to check out his other 4 archives on the show.
Right.
Okay. So
yes.
Okay.
So the fallen angel was living in the fetus that the woman was pregnant with. Oh my God. So then this is again, well, I'm a hybrid brother. Okay, I understand that. I understand. But the purpose of a hybrid mother in antiquity was for a fallen angel to be reborn amongst us. And so what was happening is you had hundreds and thousands of different women.
The giants, though.
Right. Now, okay, we're going to get into linguistics.
Okay. Yeah.
See, again, evangelical research, especially in the States, they'll go on and on and on about giants, but what they miss is the fact that the Hebrew word for Rephaim, from which they get giants, has a dual meaning. It's going to blow your mind. It's a dual meaning. It's not just exclusive. It's not monolithic. It has a two-sided version of its definition. On one side, it means giant. That's the hardware, right? That's the biological, physical avatar. The other side of the coin, the second definition, means phantom or ghost. So what our ancestors were doing is they're doing their best to encapsulate a very unique phenomenon. And that was the following, that there's hardware and there's software. Oh, Michelle, I'm getting pumped. And the hardware was the giant, but the fallen angel was the software inside of the giant. And so what they were dealing with it was a species of necromancers who were the living dead, who the thing that was living was the body. The thing that was dead was the ghost inside of it. And so they became Nephilim, fallen ones who had possessed the new body. And so this is my point in the film. We're dealing with hybridization program, and they're using women as breeders, because I believe that they're placing their own consciousness in these fetuses and using them as a biological avatar, right? And so we see them flying all of these ships, but it's consciousness, pure consciousness. And that's why the field is starting to adjust to these sails. But being pregnant with a fallen angel is a little bit different than its lovers in light and thank God I gave birth to the next Michael Jackson in the netherworld. No. What if that's a fallen angel inside of you? and it's using. Anyways, I'll shut up.
No, but no,
What an interesting
don't do
hypothesis.
that. No, don't do that. That's fascinating. What? So you would think that these, I mean, the intelligence behind these entities, these beings, do they go on to be in positions of power? I mean, or do they just sort of fade away incognito?
Okay, let's get into apparitional theory. In the Apocryphon of John, is a text. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's called the Long Codex of Apocryphon of John. It's a commentary on what happened in Genesis 6. And I've never heard of it. Evangelical researchers are kind of dropping the ball, in my opinion, because they ignore anything that isn't out. If it's not in the Bible, you know?
Right.
And I'm thinking
they won't think outside the box.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Quite literally.
Okay.
And it's a coffin. So what's happened is, okay, the Apocryphon of John, it says that these beings manifested to women, and you'll see this narrative, in the images of their husbands.
Yes.
Ta-da, ta-da.
Yeah.
And that they inseminated them with another person's seed. That's the abduction phenomenon, Betty and Barney Hill. And then that they stared into the eyes of the woman at the moment of conception. Now, that is what's called an obstetric tradition. And this points to the narrative and what they're really doing. The obstetric tradition is from Mesopotamia. Their belief was that whatever man the woman was focused on at the moment of insemination, she will birth the material image of that man through her womb as a child.
That's like the story of Zeus.
Exactly right.
Right.
This is the idea of God made us in his image.
Right.
Ooh.
Oh my
God. You like it? You like it?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So
right.
What they were doing, though, this is their whole game plan, was at the moment of inception, they stared into the female's eyes, but they did something that was a red flag, and they kind of shown, what they were doing on that. Anyways, they reversed their apparition. Now, this is very interesting, because if they were to give birth, the woman's to give birth to what she's looking at, then she would birth a child that looks like her husband, right? Because she's staring at her. But that's not what they did.
Right.
They switched their apparition to what they really looked like, so she would birth. It's going to blow your mind. She's going to birth the material, biological avatar of that apparition that hovered over her body. And so that's what in the Skin That Crawls, I talk about the idea that these beings got so tired of being John possessing Edna, right? It was mismatched. The apparition didn't fit the body.
Right.
So what they wanted was a body that looked like their apparition. Now they have biological avatars. So that plays a heavy hand in a massive role in the hybridization program. But they were spirits. They were not aliens. They weren't extraterrestrial. They were simply apparitions who used the human condition against us.
So it just seems as though humanity is constantly at a disadvantage. So like,
oh my God.
Is there like an entire, are we just surrounded by beings that are always just trying to enter the vessel?
Steve Mayer told me, because I asked him, I said, what do you think about, what's going on? He said, look, the Vatican came out behind closed doors and said, we were wrong about the battle being won between good and evil. He said, the battle is still waging.
Right.
Now what we're dealing with, again, I think that there's, and Barry Fitzgerald touched on this the other night. He was talking, the esoteric nature of the phenomenon, the way that people can use incantations to conjure these beings. Right? It's literally not going out there like NASA and probing the empty space and the cold oblivion. No, I'm going to take rituals from a Brahmin and the Mage, and I'm going to invoke you, and you're going to respond. That alone should make us question the ET hypothesis.
Well, I can tell you that the Vatican itself is in possession of many grimoires, and I can't
Right.
get into a whole lot of that, but guys, listen to
Yeah.
Brian Allan tonight. He gets into some of that, and one of the most what they call evil grimoires on the planet is there, and it was actually created by a pope to be able to enable priests to communicate and control demons. Sounds a little bit like the Solomon story.
Right.
So there's it's a good
Yeah.
interview, but
Yeah.
it lends to what you're saying about ritualistic stuff. Even
Absolutely.
when we look at, the church itself or many different religions, every time you are praying or doing, a ritual of a
Right.
blessing, you are in fact they're doing spell work.
100%. It's
Yep.
just a different word they use, right?
Yes, of
It's just a
course.
prayer.
Of
But I
course.
mean, my God, there's a
But a
guy that I've been
prayer
trying to get
is
on
a
my
spell.
exactly right. There's a
Right.
guy that I've been trying to get on my show. I grew up listening to him preach. You want to talk about a bad, bad, bad dude, Michelle?
Right.
Oh my God, he was he's a white guy that was raised in Africa as a missionary's kid, and even though we were both a part of a really stringent religious, almost a cult in a sense. That aside, right? This dude was legit.
Right.
He would come in. He would come in, and he was mentored by my dad's pastor, who was freakishly gifted. I mean, he was like Gandalf the Grey. Okay,
Right.
amazing. Anyways, this guy was the kind of guy that would fast for 30 days,
Right.
do a water fast. Okay, he there was a time when he was preaching, and he walked by a lady. It wasn't even a lady, it was a young girl. She reared back like this, Michelle, and came at him to choke him. And he looked at her, and out of her mouth spoke fluent French. Fluent French.
Mm.
Hello, Jonathan. Do you remember me? And Michelle, he's a bad dude. He spoke French back because he's from Africa. I do remember you. I casted you out of the conference in Ghana, and I'm going to do it again. Just an absolute war. But these people, you know, they were so in tune with the spirit world, but they did it through incantations. And see, when I grew up, even the word incantation, they'd freak out about it. Incantations, that's the occult. I'm thinking, no, you know what I mean? But these are people that would pray for hours. My dad's pastor, Hashir, he would pray. Okay, is this all right? Am I rambling? I don't want to ramble. But
No,
he would do
we're
this. He would
counting
do
down
this.
to the end, so keep rambling.
He would do this number, and he would say the name of God over and over and over again. He was
Mm-hmm.
the kind of guy that he was having a Bible study, and there's like 3 or 4 people in the house, and in the middle of the sentence, he goes, "Wait a minute." They said, "What?" He goes, "I'm stopping this Bible study." He said, "There's 4 people in this room, but I feel 5 souls."
Mm.
What? They went outside and found the guy across the street staring in their window.
Right. Right.
A freak, man. But these were kinds of people that were conjurers.
Right.
And they don't like that phrase, but by all measures, they were. So the phenomenon, it seems to really enjoy being conjured
Right.
and working
Right.
with them.
Well, it's communication. I mean, you have people. I think a perfect example of that was Aleister Crowley, with the
Right.
entity lamb, which looked exactly like an ET, but behaved an awful lot like something different.
Of course.
So there's that degree of magic in there. And, when you think about, going back to the Vatican and the disclosure, you actually
Mhm.
can go in and you can go down and look at the Vatican archives, but you have to
Mhm.
be very specific, apparently, about what you want, and you're not left alone. You can see it. But I imagine there's a lot of stuff that you're just not going to be allowed to see.
Right.
But in the end, it comes down to it is a bit of research that needs to be delved into because
Mhm.
you have a lot of people who are on your wavelength,
Mhm.
with the fact that there's something as old as time. Is it what we think it is? ET? Is there something more to it? Is there a blend? Are there just simply different ones? You know,
Right.
it's like I go back and I think archons. You know, like the Gnostics knew about it. It's old. It's pre-Christianity. It's pre-Essene. It's just it really
Right.
goes back. And then you've got those because they still talk about they're angels who can drive, who can pilot a craft. And so you know they're still showing the balance of good and evil. It's just the old. It's an old war. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
I don't know, but I think it's not as cut and dry as people think. It really isn't. There's
100%. 100%.
yeah, there's just a lot more study that needs to be done.
Yeah, and we need all hands on deck. Um, I mean, we need psychologists, therapists, epidemiologists,
Mm-hmm.
pathologists. Everybody needs to be on board. That's one thing
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to do in the field is, like I tell people, if we're not all at the table, we're going to all be on the menu.
Right, right. Here's a few.
Thanks,
There we
Chris.
go.
Appreciate it.
There we go.
Good quality, bro.
Yeah, there we go.
I'll take all these compliments and I'm out of here. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you take them, baby. You take them.
But yeah, I mean, if we're stuck in the middle of this war, you know, okay. Think about this for a second. A few years back, I had almost a research breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
I was so deep and dark into it, and it's not like I'm researching, bubble gum or
Yeah.
bunny rabbits. I mean, this stuff's pretty heavy.
What? Yeah.
Right. And I came across an account in Beyond UFOs, and when I read it, I promise you, Michelle, I slammed the book down on my desk. I called my dad and I said, I've got to go. I've got to get out of here. So I flew out to Rhode Island for a little bit and fed on Federal Hill a bunch of Italian food, gained about 20 pounds. But what broke my heart was an abduction account where a lady said they had been taking me since I was a kid. And she said it's the same behavioral pattern. I can feel the energy in my room. I can feel them there, though I can't see them yet.
Mm-hmm.
She said, and then I could smell their presence. And she's like, I just got tired of it. And she said she went to a church, and the pastor said, listen, I don't know what you're dealing with, because most of them don't, especially in my history.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, listen, what we want you to do is just go read the 23rd Psalm, and whatever it is, will leave.
Mm-hmm.
And Michelle, she did that. So, she's getting ready for bed or something, and she feels their presence, smells their presence, the energy's changing, and something's occurring. And so before they could manifest, she opens up her Bible, Psalms 23. In mid-sentence of reading the Bible, her eyes rolled back in her head. Gone. Which, that's why I threw the book down. I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's why. The theory that many have been operating under was, hey, all you have to do is call on divine protection, and watch this. Some other angel will just interrupt it all, and they'll have a sword fight, right? And then one guy goes down, and you're safe. I even had to.
It's heavy.
Oh, it's heavy. I mean, I was like, oh my God, because again, she's her okay. Look, she's like, okay, Psalms 23, blah 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 blah, and she's really, her eyes roll back, and she's gone. And my point here is something I was asking Dr. Barry Fitzgerald. What rules are they playing by? Do we have any definitive rules? Like, are there any at all? Right? Are there any? I'm talking any, and
it's
no.
I mean, I recommend reading the book Deception of Gods and Men. It's probably one of the best books I've read in a really long time. There's 2 segments, interviews, part 1 and part 2, because there's so much to that book that I could not get them in a 2-hour interview. I had to bring them on a second time. It is fantastic. Awesome. Fantastic interviews and fantastic book. And it would answer quite a few of your questions. Good boy. They touch on things that when you read it, you're just like, I did not see that coming. I did not
Right.
see that coming. And that definitely put the light on in
Dude,
a
I
few
think they're
different
some of
cases.
the best. I think they're like top 3 researchers in the world. Really, I mean, they're
Oh,
great,
they
great,
were,
great people.
yeah, they were fantastic. I highly recommend them. Highly recommend them. I can connect you with them if you really,
Yeah,
you'd like to communicate with them. Absolutely. So Brian's interview comes on literally right after this show.
yeah.
He gets an hour, and and it's got the chapters of Book of Secrets are all different topics, and we
Okay.
covered only 3. And
Yeah.
he's got phenomenal books.
Wow.
The next time he comes on, it's going to be a talk about his other book called The Dark Messiah. Says it
Oh, what
all.
a title! What a title,
Says it
man! I love
all.
it.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I know. So, there are. It just tells me there are researchers out there who are
Mhm.
digging really deep and with lifelong
Right.
research. Right.
Wonderful. That's what we need. They're
Much
our
like
only hope.
yourself, right? It's just, yeah, but and
I
don't be
hope.
afraid to keep digging.
Hmm.
You can always come on
Hopefully,
here and talk about it anytime you want.
yes. Hugs, my friend.
So I love it. There you
Oh,
go.
Michelle, I missed you so much, girl. You know, you're my sister from another mister, man, and I just have a blast with you.
Thank you, darling. You're always, always welcome. So, with that being
Thank you.
said, I'm going to sign off the show. So, hold tight.
Okay.
Um, well, guys, we hope you've enjoyed the the interview. I can see why I say interview. It's like a parlay. I can still see everybody chiming in here. But we have come to the end of another amazing segment here on the Outer Realm. Big thank you to Nathaniel Gillis. Big thank you to Folgers Coffee. Big thank you to Justin Snickers, Steve McGinnis. We appreciate you guys all so much. We appreciate you all in chat, and you guys just make it that much more fun. So again, remember, right after this show, okay, we've got the recording from an interview I did earlier today with Brian Allan, which is phenomenal. And he's just a phenomenal author and researcher, like 50 years in the field, phenomenal. So check him out. Now, next week, we've got, another treat. Wednesday night, guys, the Outer Realm welcomes an incredible collaboration of 2 amazing people that we most certainly consider to be friends. Together, Preston Dennett and Reverend Michael J.S. Carter. Both Ancient Aliens. They've both been on the show. Michael's scheduled for a couple more segments. Preston's a frequent flyer, but they are friends as well, and they are basically going to be doing an episode together. So let's talk ET. Let's talk, ancient astronauts. Let's just get into all of it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thursday night, we welcome the return of John Gachupa, and he's an amazing author as well. And he's going to we're going to talk a little bit paranormal, going back to Ohio hauntings, to which he's written a book about. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And I always look forward to seeing people I haven't seen in a while, much like Nathaniel. So you can see it's just like kind of like a big old reunion, right? So,
Oh yeah. Oh
right.
yeah.
So you guys want to contact me, you know how, here we go. I've been sort of tagging the email up because I've been getting asked a lot for the email. And apparently I blurp it off too quick at the end of the show. So here it is, and you can catch it periodically popping up while the show is airing. So I hope you guys all have a fantastic weekend. Stay safe, and we will see you all next week. Good night.